Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're celebrating 30 years of Transilvanian Hunger by Darkthrone. We're back at it again with another iconic black metal album review. And this one is tricky. Because this is one of those albums that is iconic. This is a staple in the genre. This is one of those albums that helped define the genre, right? In a sense, because 1994 was a huge year for black metal, as we know. It was. And, you know, this came out early in 1994, and it just isn't good. Like, I'm just so sorry. I know there's fans out there, there's loyalists out there who really like this. I've listened to this album before. I'm not new to this. And I think the album's fine. I can put it on and enjoy it. But again, it's one of those things where if I'm listening to it as a critic, listening to it, judging it, it really doesn't have a lot of high points to it. And it's like, I'm starting to go back and think, when have I ever enjoyed this album? And it's like, there's two times, when I'm drunk or high. Not exactly two exactly, but if I'm drunk or high, I can enjoy it. And I think the reason is because this album basically has a non-stop wall of blast beats that are the same tempo, basically same rhythm for the whole 39-minute duration, essentially. There's a couple small variations there, but that's basically what you got. And that pulsating 4/4 beat that just persists nearly the whole time can be very trance-inducing. And to somebody that's under the influence, that's something that can make you go like, oh shit, this is sick. Like, it's just one of those things. So I think it goes a long way if you've had a few beers or a few shots or smoked a blunt or something. Like, it can definitely go a long way in that respect. But listening to it with sober mind, sound mind, there's so many flaws with this album, and it all boils down to a couple things. One is the mix, which I'm sure we'll get into. And the second one, I think, is the fact that it's only a two-piece band. I mean, I don't know if they had other people helping record, but basically it's Fenriz and Nocturnal Culto.
I believe they had a drummer who left not long before this one.
That's right. So they had a drummer before this album was recorded. I don't even know if he was on so it's on Unholy Trinity, right?
Yeah.
You got A Blaze in the Northern Sky and Under a Funeral Moon, and then Transylvanian Hunger. That's the unholy trinity of black metal albums. I'm not sure if they had a drummer on the other albums or not. I didn't look into it. But anyways, on this one, they got two people. And when you have two people, yeah, they're covering all the instruments, but they're doing it basically and sloppily, is what it sounds like. So that's why you're not getting a lot of variation in things like the drums. You're getting just the blast beat through the whole album. That's the same thing over and over again. Okay, let's talk about the mix a little bit. So, the track number 2. Okay, I'm not going to try to read these tracks because they're in Norwegian and I don't want to just butcher it. But track number 2, the mix is so bad. So basically, in this one, you get some parts in the left and right channel that are just randomly louder than the other. Just it's loud over here. Oh, then it's loud over here. Oh, then it's loud over here. What's it doing? It doesn't know what it wants to do. Just all over the place. Then you get, you know, they all sound pretty bad. Track number 5, you have all the treble in the left channel, and you have bottomless bass in the right channel. It's like you can hear the bass is there, but there's almost no bottom end.
The entire album is bottomless. I remember listening to this album, and I had this subwoofer, and I remember I had to bend down to check something or tie my shoe, and I'm like, there's nothing there. There's nothing happening from my sub.
It just sounds awful in headphones too. Track number 7, to me, sounded like a random jam session that just made it onto the record with zero refinement. Like they just jammed something out and went, okay, put it on. That's it. It's done. So I don't know. It was really hard to listen to this album and find things that were actually positives, but I did find some stuff that was okay. In track number 2, the outro reminded me a lot of Raining Blood, or it reminded me a lot of the intro to Raining Blood, which I think I've said that on album review or something recently that we did. I don't know, for some reason things are reminding me of Raining Blood lately, but this came out about 6-7 years after Raining Blood, I think. So maybe there's some inspiration there. Who knows? The thing that sucks about it is that it just abruptly cuts off. It just starts going and then it just goes, boop, done. Now that could be a Spotify thing. I don't know. I don't have the original vinyl or anything like that, or the original cassette or whatever. So, but that just sucked. I was like, okay, they're getting into something and then done. It's over. Next track. Track number 6, I thought had a fair attempt at some riff variation and even some double bass in this song, but it felt like the attempt felt sad. Like it just was a lackluster attempt to switch things up, and that was a bit disappointing. And I wonder how I would have thought about this album if I had listened to it closer to release, because I didn't listen to this album back in the 90s. I listened to it well into my, I guess, maybe late teens, early adulthood. So we're talking like in the early to mid 2000s is when I listened to this for the first time. But back in the day when I was, I guess I was 10 in 94, I was listening to Metallica, Nirvana, The Offspring, Marilyn Manson was starting to get into my playlist, things like that. I wonder how I would have felt if I heard this at that time. I probably would have hated it. And
I mean, based on what you were listening to, this doesn't really line up with it.
It doesn't really line up with it, but it's also a point of my life where I was a lot more, I guess, maybe experimental and open to new things. Yeah, I was learning.
I was about to say, like, it could have been your gateway into black metal.
It could have been my gateway into black metal, exactly. So that's one thing that I kept thinking about throughout this week as well. Another thing that I wrote down here about track number 7 is that the riff sounded like you're hearing the thoughts of someone who's been sentenced and locked in a padded room. Now that might not mean anything to you as I'm saying that, but the fact that it gave me that image, I think is a really cool thing, because if a riff or something in a song, an instrument, can give you a visualization of something, I think that's when they're doing something right. And that's when they're, hitting the nail on the head, so to speak.
Well, more so locked in a padded room, given a guitar and said, hey, make an album.
Yeah, however you want to word it, yeah. But I felt like I was hearing someone's thoughts who was crazy, and they're like in a straitjacket, like, I don't know. But again, this is, the same song that I said just sounded like a random jam session, so.
I mean, I'll say my opinion on that song. I like that the drums are more audible in that specific track. That being said,
they come and go, yeah.
The guitar just kind of fools around with like a minor triad or something, and there's basically no content in that song. It's just da, 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 and then that's it. There's nothing there. There's just nothing there. So my first impression of this album was kind of like a bit of shock. Like, what? What is this? Because we've heard Dark Throne before. We reviewed Dark Throne before. Dark Throne dropped an album this year. We checked it out. I liked it. It Beckons Us All I thought was pretty good. I thought, I enjoyed that album. So listening to this, I remember hearing the title track at first and thinking like, okay, you got like this muffled sound and then the whole sound's gonna come in and like this is just the intro, right? And then it just kept going. I'm like, oh, this is it? So this is it. Oh. Well then, it was a difficult time to really listen to it, because I've on this channel for a long time have commented I don't really like albums that sound like basement tapes or demos or that kind of overall sound. We've never actually covered one until now. That's basically what the vibe with this album is. It sounds like, super basically unfinished, almost like a demo kind of recording. That is the literal sound quality. That's what this mix is. The low end is gone. Like I said, there was nothing coming out of that subwoofer. So I felt that it was difficult, but I was able to start to get my ears to adjust to it. But it was difficult because my ears would adapt to this album's sound. If I listened to anything else for whatever reason and then came back to this, I'd have to readjust again. Because I'd listen to something else with a more clear mix and then come back to this and I'd be like, oh, what the hell? Right. Like, I got to adapt to that again. So I decided to as I was checking out this album, listened to a few other Darkthrone albums from this time. I listened to both of the other albums from the Unholy Trinity, and I listened to Panzerfaust, which is the album that came out in '95, year after this one, just to get some context, like, okay, did that era of this band just sound like this, or did they change? What happened? So I liked both A Blaze in the Northern Sky and I liked all three of those albums more than this one.
Yeah.
A Blaze in the Northern Sky was interesting because it felt like a transition between first and second wave of black metal almost. Kind of felt like they were kind of getting out of that death metal-esque kind of sound and getting more into like the blast beat heavy kind of stuff that second wave is known for. And then Under a Funeral Moon, it has a bit less drum variety, but it makes sense. And the drumming is more audible than on this record. And I feel like it was kind of a transition album between Blaze and Hunger here, how it's like they kind of got more of the almost droning kind of sound stuff, but it doesn't sound as kind of shitty as this one. Now, I found that Panzerfaust took what Transylvanian Hunger kind of laid down and improved it. The mix is a bit better and there's more variety in the overall sound of the album. I thought that was cool. So, to me, that like my conclusion that I drew from doing all that is that Transylvanian Hunger was, in a sense, an experiment. They tried something here. They tried, what if we just like take out this low end, make it sound like you can barely hear anything basically, and just kind of ride this one thing for like 6 minutes or 4 minutes or 2 minutes. There's a bit of variety in the song lengths. Not that it makes a difference. But, so they tried something, and I respect that. I respect that they made an attempt for something here. Do I believe it worked? No.
Fair enough.
I don't really think it was very effective. That being said, I feel like it probably inspired a lot of artists, especially around this time. But I also feel that they had done better before, and they did better afterwards. So, to talk about some songs, I mean, the first track was, at first, I was just like, nothing. And then I'm like, you know what? I kind of like the atmosphere they kind of build. And that's kind of what this album is trying to do. Give you an atmosphere, this evil black metal atmosphere, which some songs it kind of works because they do something that's kind of cool and evil sounding with the guitar, but it's still hard to get over the hurdle that is the mix quality. And I think that makes this album an acquired taste. Because people who love this album to death. It's like, this is the black metal album, evil. But I feel like you have to get over that hump. And there are tons of bands and albums that are like that. For example, Meshuggah is an acquired taste. Not everyone can just get into them. It's a bit difficult for some people, you know? Yeah. I know in your case, it's just not your thing, right? For people like me, I love that band. So I feel like it's a similar thing with this album. It's an acquired taste kind of album. You mentioned, I did mention that 7th track where it's like, wow, the drums are more audible, but the guitars don't really do anything. 2nd track, didn't like that one either because it just feels like a worse version of the title track. Nothing happens, but it's 1/3 of the length. But there, I made a few notes of stuff that I did enjoy. The start of the title track and the small B, or I think possibly C section in the middle, kind of sounded cool. And this is based just on the guitars. I'm like, if that guitar riff was put together with a proper mix and some better drumming, it would be a good song. That's kind of the perspective I have there. Also, the 3rd track, I kind of like the guitar concept they had going in that one as well. The 6th track has a B section I kind of like, and I feel like a track like track 5, I feel like it would be better if the mix was better. So there are bits and pieces I kind of liked and kind of enjoyed, and it took a while for me to really drill this album into my head and try to get used to it, but it's difficult because a lot of it's very repetitive, and overall, can you really say, man, that song really specifically stood out over that one when they both basically do a very similar thing? I just mentioned a bunch of individual things that kind of stood out, but it took a while to really drill it into my head to kind of find those parts and understand it that way. So I understand that, culturally this album stood for a lot. But us as people reviewing the album, we're listening to it, trying to review it as a music album. For me, it was not really working. And I understand once again that it is an acquired taste, but I just couldn't really do it with this one.
Yeah, acquired taste is one way to put it, but another thing, for one, I think we should get to ratings. I'm going to give my final thoughts here and then rate the album.
Yeah.
There's, this is a cultural thing because there was a point in time when, especially in this part of the world and with this genre and things like that, people weren't in this to make money and to make good music. It was peak counterculture. The idea of producing an album like this is to piss people off. They don't want people to like it. They don't put it out trying to please anybody. They're putting it out to say, fuck you. This is, it's basically a giant middle finger in music form, is essentially what this is.
Yes, it is.
And that's why they put it out and it sounds so messy, and they didn't fix the mix and they didn't, adjust anything, and it's just the straight wall of blast beats for 39 minutes. Like, that's done on purpose. That's not done because they're bad musicians or bad songwriters or anything like that. And the proof to that is that their other albums around this aren't like this, right? At least not to this extent, not to this extreme. So the fact that they decided to do this, I think, was actually a conscious decision. I think they did this on purpose to basically say, we're gonna make the worst album, and if you don't like it, too bad, fuck you. And then the people who are true cult, who are true, into that whole thing, those are the people that are really gravitating towards this, because metal as a genre is formed on a counterculture mindset. This is peak that. This is pinnacle that. So, with that said, I also feel like what the album lacks in presentation, it makes up for notoriety, is essentially what this boils down to. But unfortunately, notoriety doesn't score well on an album. So this album, score-wise, gets a 2 from me. And that's sad. I've given lower scores.
Yeah.
But again, I like the album. It's like I could put it on and just enjoy it as just raw black metal. But coming at it from a critical mind, coming at it as a reviewer, there's not much here to praise, man. There really just isn't.
Yeah, this was a difficult album for me to listen to. I did not enjoy it. I enjoyed their other work more. I understand what they were going for. It just didn't work for me. It's gonna get a 3, which is,
wow,
ouch.
That is ouch. Yeah, one of our lowest rated albums on the channel, and we've been doing this for a while. So, as usual, we want to hear from you guys though. Do you guys agree with the stuff we said? Because we're pretty harsh on this album, and I think we're justified. But if you don't think we are, you could always sound off down below and let some of you guys think what you guys love about this album, if there's stuff you love. And maybe there's other Dark Throne stuff that, you think is way better, and we would agree on that. Anyways, guys, just sound off down below. Hit the subscribe button if you guys are new to the channel. I'm Vile Self.
I'm TV Fish.
I'll see you guys in the next one.